from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Coming up on AgDay, the president wraps up a trade trip to Asia, plus harvest progress from USDA, an agribusiness and dairy export update.
It's a pretty tight balancing act that we're walking there.
Blueberry milk is on the menu in Maine, and as robots and self-driving tractors take to the farm, pizza is getting its own autonomous driver.
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. President Trump's overseas mission to Asia has come to a close. The White House touts the billions of dollars in business deals that were finalized during the 10-day trip. But will any success seen along the Pacific Rim be muted by the next round of talks for the North American Free Trade Agreement? President Trump spent his last day of the trip attending the ASEAN summit in the Philippines. The president spoke about the U.S. goal of achieving a truly free and open Indo-Pacific region. Now, Trump met Monday with Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who hosted the president in Tokyo earlier in the trip. The president says he will have what he calls a major statement about the trip on Wednesday, but until then, he declared the five-nation journey a success for the U.S.
We've made some very big steps with respect to trade, far bigger than anything you know. In addition to about $300 billion in sales to various companies, including China, that was $250 billion and going up very substantially from that. But we've made a lot of big progress on trade. We have deficits with almost everybody. Those deficits are going to be cut very quickly and very substantially.
If the announcement from the White House occurs on Wednesday, it will coincide with the next round of talks over NAFTA. Negotiators from the U.S., Canada, and Mexico will reassemble Wednesday in Mexico. Now, there's been growing concern in agriculture that the U.S. will walk away from the talks, ending the 23-year-long trade pact. During his recent visit with farm broadcasters, Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue discussing his recent comments about the need for contingency plans if the U.S. does pull out of the trilateral agreement.
I'm kind of a Boy Scout. I want to be prepared. And obviously, I've told you before several times here today, I think we'll have a successful NAFTA negotiation. But I'm the kind of guy that likes Plan B. And that was really my considerations. And I'm willing to approach people that I think can make a difference in that regard. And, what if, those kind of things. We know that, we all know in this room that if NAFTA was not successful, then it's going to be pretty damaging to our commodities, already low commodity prices. So I like to be prepared, and that was my thinking out loud. Probably was a little premature to get out ahead with you guys with microphones, but anyway, I'm just trying to think ahead and prepare.
Also on trade, Perdue speaking about his recent travels to Europe. He says dealing with EU countries has been frustrating for a long time.
I mentioned the frustration with the EU. I think many of these nations, frankly, bilaterally, we could do very well with. And yet there's this EU umbrella that prevents a lot of that. And I frankly blame the EU construct and that old governance there of being able to speak on one side one time and go back and hide under that EU umbrella the other time.
Meanwhile, the future of glyphosate use in Europe is unclear. European Union nations failing to agree on the continued use of the weed killer. The license is set to expire next month. The European Parliament wants to extend the license by 5 years, but the European Commission prefers a 10-year extension. Of the 28 member nations which voted last week, half were in favor of the 10-year extensions, but a majority is needed. An appeals committee made up of member nations is expected to rule on the vote before the end of November. Harvest rolls on, ever persistent, according to the latest crop progress report. There are some minor delays with the corn harvest. It's now just 8 points behind average at 83%. The upper Midwest is showing the biggest delays, with Minnesota 15 points behind, Wisconsin's 20 points behind in corn harvest. And now to soybeans, where most states are closing out their harvest. Overall, 93% is in the bin, just 2 points off average. Delays can be measured in the single digits. And winter wheat planting is almost finished, with 95% now seeded, 84% is emerged, which is actually ahead of average. 54% is rated good to excellent overall. Let's take a look at harvest from around the country. For that, we turn to Mike Hoffman. He has today's crop comments. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Clinton. Heath Peterson in South Dakota sent us this picture last week. He has 190 acres left to strip till. However, he battled frost 4 feet deep. Heath says it would be nice to see some sunshine. Our next photo is from Mike Lass in Lockney, Texas. He's working out feeders to turn out to pasture. Temperatures in the area are lingering in the 60s and low 70s right now. And take a look at the weather map. You can see high pressure dominating from Texas all the way into the northeast. A couple of big systems, though, coming east. We'll tell you where those are headed next, coming up in just a few minutes. First, here are some hometown temps.
Farm Journal On Air is the go-to app for American agriculture. AgDay, AgriTalk, U.S. Farm Report, and more. 24/7 access to all of your favorite shows, TV and radio. In your hands, on demand. Farm Journal On Air. Download the app today.
Dairy exports are the key to milk prices. We'll discuss the outlook for shipments coming up in analysis. And later, technology is getting more pervasive on the farm, but also in the food industry. Pizza deliveries going it alone today, one in the country.
AgDay, brought to you by John Deere. Where can you find the most comprehensive inventory of John Deere certified pre-owned tractors, combines, and sprayers? MachineFinder.com. Sometimes the best new addition to your fleet isn't new.
Agribusiness, it was a rough start for grains in early trade Monday. Let's see how those contracts closed from the Philly Senior in Chicago.
Today in soybeans, they were lower. Futures slipped to a new 1-month low. It seems that the market is just not able to hang on to the slowdown of the drop after the USDA report. And there is some concerns that the market could fall much further if we get any more follow-through selling. Corn also was sagging somewhat. The futures really were staying in a tight range, and traders have been digesting this USDA report, concerning about the uptick in the yield numbers. The cattle market slipped yet again. The futures really continued that bearish trend for the 6th day in a row. The next support level is that 118. That's all from the floor at the CME Group here in Chicago. I'm Virginia McGathy.
With strong production in the U.S., dairy exports are important to maintaining those prices. Tyne Morgan has more on export demand in today's analysis from the road.
Here now is Scott Brown from the University of Missouri. Scott, when we look at this export picture for dairy, we recently have seen a run up in the U.S. dollar index. The values, we don't need to see increase. We really need to see those retreat for better export news, but they haven't. So has that impacted dairy exports at this time?
Well, I think we've actually seen, still some pretty strong exports out of the United States, but just this morning, we got global dairy trade numbers that suggested that overall index down 3.5%. So, it begins to make you worry when you see global butter prices this week down 3.6%, I believe, out of that report. Cheese down as well. It's a pretty tight balancing act that we're walking there.
Do you expect to see more pressure on that export market?
It's really hard to say, so fat demand's been really strong both in this country and around the world, dairy fat in particular, and that may still be in the works as we look ahead in 2018. So we could see some strength still as we go forward, but maybe not enough to keep prices higher in this country.
Yeah, when we look at the supply, we don't need to see those export numbers go down. We really need to see it here at home. We need to see it internationally, and you just don't see that picture changing enough at this point?
Not right now, not when we talk about 3 billion pound increase in milk production this year, another 3+ billion pounds next year. Just growing supplies in front of us makes me worried about that price outlook.
I remember I talked to you a year ago at Farm Journal's Milk Conference, and you said, dairy producers are really good at producing more when prices are good and out yielding the price when prices are bad. And so we've gotten into this situation where we just have this oversupply of milk. Do you think that changes over the next year?
So I do think when you look at the last milk production report, we finally have slowed down a little bit in this country. I think that's the start of maybe some better news for us on the supply side. But we'll wait and see as we move forward in 2018.
Because we need to see major supply revisions, right?
We do, or very strong demand. When you look at all of agriculture today, especially meat and dairy products, demand has been pulling us despite what have been very large supplies. That could continue.
So in the beef market, we've been talking about there's just no major imbalances right now. Supply and demand have kind of remained in step together. That's not the case in dairy?
Maybe a little less so.
Okay.
I just worry when you look at dairy, you're just balanced on the head of a pin. Very small changes in supply or demand give us some pretty large changes in prices.
All right, Dr. Brown, we appreciate it. Stay with us. We need to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with more Ag Day.
Receive a free trial of the Daily Grain Plan newsletter from Roach Ag Marketing. Text Roach to 31313. Start your subscription today by texting Roach to 31313.
AgDay weather, brought to you by Kawasaki and the new Mule Pro FXR side-by-side. Ride like a boss with high-end styling and rugged capability.
Welcome back to AgDay. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman. Mike, if we look at the weather map this week, lots of things to expect, I believe.
Yeah, there's a lot of energy coming in out west, and it's moving east, and it's going to be producing a big storm in the east as we head through the week. The first one really doesn't look too impressive at the moment coming into the far western plains, but as it comes east, it'll be picking up some Gulf moisture, and it will become a fairly potent storm system as it moves farther east. This storm is a huge storm, and that will be very slowly coming into the west coast, but that energy eventually, as you'll see on the jet stream, comes east, and a big storm ends up in the east as we head through Thanksgiving week. Let's get through the next 2 days first of all, though. You can see the first front coming east. Lots of clouds ahead of it, just not a lot of moisture. Fair amount of snow to the north of that area of low pressure, but high pressure is still dominating in the northeast down into southeastern Texas. And then you can see as we move through tonight and into tomorrow morning, a lot of moisture starts to get involved with this cold front. So widespread showers, maybe thunder showers out ahead of this cold front as it comes east. And you can see the next system coming in out west. Now this is a shot of a little bit colder air coming out of the north with that high pressure. And that will be spreading through the northern and central plain states later in the day tomorrow. Farther north, though, it'll be snow in the northern lakes, but mainly rain through the central and southern lakes. Scattered showers all the way down into southeast Texas with that one. So again, this storm will eventually, it's going to take a while, but eventually come east into a pretty big storm. And this one will keep intensifying as it goes toward the east coast. So precipitation estimate, very little east of the Rockies over the past 24 hours. Adding in the next 36 hours, we are going to add some moisture as we get that farther east, but you'll notice it's not a lot. In general, we're talking a half inch or less with that cold front. But off to the west, western Washington, western Oregon, northern California, some areas end up with 2 or 3 inches of moisture. Southeast Florida, the same idea. Snowfall past 24 hours, most of it the northern Rockies, and in Canada, adding in the next 36 hours. You can see how we do add some more across parts of Canada and maybe the far northern Great Lakes and the northern and western portions of the Rockies, only in the higher elevations though. Temperatures this afternoon in the 70s in Texas, but still chilly in the northeastern plains, Great Lakes in the northeast. Low temperatures tonight going to drop off into the 20s in a large part of the northern plains, the northeast, and all the way down into the 40s in Atlanta, kind of chilly air there. 70s over eastern Texas tomorrow. That's the very cold air poised to come southward for tomorrow afternoon and beyond. Here's the jet stream, and you can see kind of zonal flow to start. As we head through time, we are going to see the trough continuing to move off to the east. Maybe we'll get our computer system to move off to the east here. We'll see. It's not going to. There we go. Then we finally end up with the big trough by next Tuesday, pulling in some big-time cold air for the eastern parts of the country. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. First of all, for Carlsbad, New Mexico, mostly sunny, rather warm today, high temperature of 75 degrees. Ironwood, Michigan, cloudy, just a bit of drizzle, high around 40. And finally, Lake City, Florida, a good deal of sunshine and nice, high temperature of 72 degrees.
When we come back, another undercover video surfaces from a Florida dairy and the rise of the robots, at least for delivering pizza.
The Dairy Report on AgDay is brought to you by QLF. For 40 years, QLF has been proud to support American farmers that feed the world.
A dairy farm in Florida dealing with backlash from a newly released undercover video. It shows employees kicking and hitting cows, a Florida grocery chain suspending its ties to the farm, and the National Milk Producers Federation has put the Larson farm in Okeechobee on probation. A local sheriff is investigating, and the family has addressed that video, firing the employee and saying the behavior is unacceptable on their dairy and goes against the farm's protocols. Now, the dairy industry says often farms like this are targeted by activists.
These individuals are being paid by activist organizations. They are also there to not do their job of caring for animals or to not report any concerns. And frequently they help instigate, or they are the cause of what you see on the videos. But because the whole goal is to help create a distrust by the public and to use that to target a retailer or a restaurant or a brand company to shame them in some way to then drop this farmer as a supplier.
DMI reminds producers to remain diligent when hiring. They say hire the right people, do background checks and reference checks. If someone seems suspicious, tell other farmers, put new hires on probation and partner them with trusted employees. DMI also says it's fair to require employees to sign a non-disclosure and confidentiality agreement that includes a clause for liquidated damages for taking or distributing photographs or video, and finally follow up. Be sure to create a process for hiring and firing on the farm. Back at home, the U.S. Department of Ag announced it will delay the Organic Livestock and Poultry Practices Rule until January 19th. There are several provisions under the rule, an example of which is requiring outdoor access for poultry that will produce meat to be labeled certified organic. Now, the USDA announcement saying during the course of reviewing the rule, officials discovered a material error in the record, and there was a question about the scope of statutory authority. Some Democrats are outraged, calling it a delaying tactic by the administration. And it appears Maine's wild blueberry industry may get some help from the state's dairy producers. Maine's blueberry sector has been looking for new buyers to help drive up demand and improve prices. Well, it recently found one such new buyer, Oakhurst Dairy. It's one of the biggest milk producers in the state, serving much of New England. The company announcing it will start producing blueberry milk. Company chose to make the milk flavored with blueberries after the concept won a social media contest with consumers. Now, wild blueberries are smaller in size than cultivated blueberries. Up next, are farmers willing to embrace autonomous technology? And what if that driverless mode ends up delivering pizza in the country when we come back?
AgDay, brought to you by the Enlist Weed Control System. More weed control, less drift and volatility, maximum yield potential. In the Country, sponsored by Kubota. Discover the power behind the M6 series at Kubota.com or visit your local Kubota dealer today.
Driverless combines, tractors, and grain carts are in the not-too-distant future. We've already witnessed the autonomous technology in action during field tests. Now, two Michigan-based companies, Ford and Domino's Pizza, are teaming up to see if customers will warm up to the idea of pizza delivery from a driverless car. Mike Householder reports.
It's a scene that plays out in college towns across America. A student orders pizza, and it's delivered a short time later. The difference here is that no one's driving this car.
The Domino's heatwave container is open.
At least that's what the pizza buyers believe.
I just got a call after my order, like, your order will be delivered by a driverless car. I'm like, oh, exciting, I want to see that.
Domino's and Ford are teaming up to see if customers will warm to the idea of pizza delivered by autonomous vehicles.
Delivery is a really important part of who we are, and autonomous vehicles are a technology that's coming. So it's really important that we understand how this new upcoming technology is going to impact our business in the future.
Ford, which plans to introduce a fully driverless vehicle in 2021,
Input the last 4 digits of your phone number.
also wants to understand the kinds of scenarios for which companies would use it.
The Domino's heatwave container is open. You can safely...
So the automaker worked with Domino's to set up the experiment in the pizza company's hometown of Ann Arbor, Michigan, sending out on deliveries a Fusion hybrid autonomous research vehicle, complete with LiDAR, radar, and camera sensors. A Ford engineer sits behind the wheel of the Fusion, but the front windows are blacked out so customers won't interact with him.
They can track the vehicle using GPS all the way to their location, and then they walk out to the car.
Hello. Okay, what are the last 4 digits of Mommy's phone number?
They enter in the 4-digit code, and basically it reveals this pizza compartment opens, and the pizza is there, and they take their pizza and they walk away.
Test subject Teresa Hatcher says she sees value in the technology.
I think it would be cool. It'd probably be safer to a certain extent in the future. I know there's a lot more research that needs to be done, but that could be one of the benefits.
The experiment is designed to give insights into how customers interact with a self-driving car.
Will customers come out to the car? Do they want to actually come out and retrieve their own pizza? Are they willing to go through the process of typing in a digit? Do they understand it? Is it really clear? What are the other what ifs? Like, what other kind of things can happen?
Now that the 6-week-long testing period has run its course, the companies say they'll dig through the data before making a call about the future of driverless pizza deliveries. Mike Householder, Associated Press, Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Have a delicious day.
Thanks, Mike. I guess there's no need to add a tip to that one. That's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.
AgDay, brought to you by Ram Commercial, America's longest-lasting heavy-duty pickups.